around here. So we get started. Okay, I'm a little out of practice. Welcome everyone to the regular meeting of
Recording in progress.
and Infrastructure Commission for May 2nd, 2022 for the city of West Sacramento. We will do a call to order and I will, I guess, call everyone's name and we'll respond here or not here. Vice Chair Therical.
Present.
Commissioner Cianez. No response. Commissioner Johnston. She's here. She's muted. Commissioner Lichtenstein.
Here.
Commissioner Kashkouli.
Present.
Commissioner Gunn.
Present.
And do we have a new alternate commissioner?
We do have a new alternate commissioner. I don't know if he's actually going to be attending this meeting. I have not heard.
Okay. I don't see him, but if if he arrives, I believe not everyone is here, so he would be able to participate. Okay. Pursuant to the governor's executive order N-29-20, members of the West Sacramento Transportation, Mobility, and Infrastructure Commission and staff will participate in this meeting via teleconference. To reduce the spread of COVID-19, members of the public are asked to watch the meeting via cable channel 20 and submit comments in writing by 5 p.m. on May 2nd, 2022. To submit a comment in writing, please email tanyaf@cityofwestsacramento.org and write public comment in the subject. In the body of the email, the item number and or title of the item, as well as your comment. All comments received by 5 p.m. will be provided to the TMI Commission and posted on the website. Comments submitted shall become part of the record of the meeting. Make a verbal comment during the meeting, join the meeting via the Zoom meeting link or phone number below. For those of you who are listening, you may have found it already, but I'm not going to give you the Zoom meeting over verbally. Okay. The chair will request public comment during item 1A prior to the first item on consent and after the staff presentation for any other item on the agenda. Once the chair has announced the public comment period, if you would like to make a comment, one of the following. 1, if you are joining the meeting via Zoom, press the raise a hand button, or 2, if you are joining the meeting via phone, press *9. When it is your turn to comment, the chair or the clerk will call on you by name or phone number, and city staff will unmute your microphone. You'll have 3 minutes to speak. Once your public comment has ended, you'll be muted again. I see we may have, before we move on, we may have Commissioner McCredden joining the meeting. Has Commissioner McCredden been to a meeting yet? No, not yet. Did I pronounce your name correctly?
Yes, thank you.
Would you like to briefly introduce yourself?
Sure. My name is Alex McCredden. I'm the newest commissioner. I currently work with Yolo County Health and Human Services Agency, have a background in public policy and administration, and looking forward to serving.
Welcome. I'm glad to have you here, and thanks for coming. And we are one commissioner short, so you are being asked to participate in this meeting as a full commissioner today. Great. We are going to move on to General Administration Function Part 1. A, presentation by the public on matters not on the agenda within the jurisdiction of the Commission. The Commission is prohibited from discussing items not on the agenda brought to them at this time. Are there any presentations by the public to be heard at this time?
We have none.
Okay, hearing none, we will move on to Part B, disclosure of ex parte communications. Transportation, Mobility, and Infrastructure Commissioners should disclose any communications they have had on agenda items at this time. Commissioners, do you have any communications to disclose? Okay, hearing none, we will move on to the consent agenda. Item 2, consideration of approval of the minutes of the March 7th, 2022 Transportation, Mobility, and Infrastructure Commission. Do I hear a a motion to approve?
Move to approve the consent agenda.
Okay, motion to approve by Vice Chair Thurical. Any second? Commissioner Gunn, a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. We need to take roll.
We need to take roll. Okay. Commissioner Thurical,
Aye.
Commissioner Lichtenstein,
Aye.
Commissioner Gunn,
Aye.
Commissioner Johnston,
I'd like to abstain since I was absent from the last meeting.
okay. Commissioner McCredden,
I'll abstain also since I was not at the last meeting.
okay, and Commissioner Kashkouli.
Aye.
So I believe that is 4 ayes, and I'll add myself since I listened to it afterwards. So 5 ayes and 2 abstains. Kind of correctly. So the consent agenda motion passes. Moving on to the regular agenda, item 3 is update on the West Sacramento Mobility Action Plan. The purpose of this report is to provide an update to the Transportation Mobility and Infrastructure Commission on the West Sacramento Mobility Action Plan. The recommendation is that staff respectfully recommends the commission receive staff's update on the Mobility Action Plan. So there's no item to approve or pass a motion. So I'm going to hand it over to Stephanie Chan. Did I pronounce your name correctly? Yes, okay. I'm handing it over. Looking forward to this.
Hello, good evening. I'm sorry about that. I was like, where's the unmute button? Good evening, everyone. My name is Stephanie Chan, and I'm a senior transportation planner with the Community Development Department. I'm here with, tonight to present to you an update on the West Sacramento Mobility Action Plan. And everyone can see my PowerPoint, right? Okay, great. So by way of background, the City Council adopted the Mobility Action Plan on June 16, 2021. And today's presentation is just to provide a status update on the efforts outlined in the map since its adoption. For some of our newer commissioners, unlike a typical transportation plan that identifies and plans for basic transportation needs by mode, the West Sacramento Mobility Action Plan takes a step further by focusing on how different modes can connect and integrate in relation to one another. At its core, the map's all about ensuring community members have a diversity in choices on how they can get around. And it's an implementation tool that's intended to achieve the general plan goals and the Mayor's Commission on Climate Change goals. It's also a living document, meaning that it's intended to evolve with changes in development, technologies, policies. The map identified 6 overarching strategies outlined on this slide intended to support the implementation of the map. I won't go into and read every one of these for you, but they're outlined here. And the rest of the presentation, I'll provide some updates on some of the projects we're currently working on and how they relate to each of these strategies. So as you're aware, the city provides an on-demand rideshare program, partnering with VIA Transportation since 2018. Again, I'm not going to go into too much detail on the VIA program because we do have a separate item next, specifically on a workshop on the VIA program, but I do want to highlight some details that relate to the map and its strategies. I would like to highlight some main points. The city in VIA is currently concluding its 4th year of operations. We recently had a new fleet provider and moved to transition to a hybrid fleet by June 30th, 2022. We're currently in the transition mode right now. A recent report by VIA estimated that the program has reduced emissions by 22% as riders shift towards a shared ride program. Furthermore, the city and YOLO Bus provides free transfers between VIA and YOLO Bus, and we've supported over or nearly 4,000 transfers to date. Lastly, the city, as of yesterday, May 1st, launched a summer transportation pilot program between the neighborhoods of Broderick and Bright to and from the recreation center between May 1st to September 1st to provide residents in that area a free ride to get to the pool and other recreational activities during the hot summer months. Apologies. And then also the VIA program relates to this map and strategy area providing convenient and accessible transit and shared mobility options. The city staff is also currently working on the Plug-in Partnership Program. This is a $2.6 million grant awarded by SACOG in 2018. The city partnered with ChargePoint on the grant application, allowing ChargePoint to support a 11.47 city's local match in order to receive the grant. This project relates to strategy 4 of the map to encourage the adoption and equitable access of zero emission vehicles and alternative transportation options. This program can be really broken down into 3 main efforts. The first effort is to install electrical vehicle charging equipment. So the city is working on EV equipment around this phase 1 of the equipment is to install this equipment at easy to access, easy to install EV ready sites. These sites are listed in the staff report, but it includes City Hall, Heritage Oaks Parks, the new Corporation Yard, Joey Lowe's Park, the Bridge Street parking lot, and the community center, as well as staff currently working on identifying a few additional sites. The commitment to SACOG through the grant is to install at minimum 25 level 2 chargers and 7 DC FC direct current fast chargers. And the other 2 efforts of the grant program is to purchase zero emission demonstration vehicles and to coordinate with freight stakeholders and the business community to encourage transition to electrification of the goods movement. So we've been working as a member of a roundtable that is led by, oops, sorry. We're sitting on a roundtable that is led by, I believe, SMUD and the Air Quality Management District. And there's been a recent survey that's identified the current existing medium and heavy duty infrastructure in the of the partners in this of the freight partners in this area. The city also works on has permitted 3 micromobility operators to operate in the city of West Sac. This program relates to strategy 3, providing convenient and accessible shared mobility options. Strategy 5, providing tools for emerging technology and equitable transportation. And strategy 6, developing policy frameworks for transportation investments with a focus on social equity. So our 3 transportation micromobility operators include Bird, which has a permit to operate 300 scooters, Lime, which has a permit to operate 150 bikes and 150 scooters, and Razor, which has a permit to operate 100 scooters in the city. The city staff recently updated our website to include information for the public, as well as encourage and promote this information at events such as Earth Day on how to access these micromobility operators without a credit card, and to options for discount programs. So Lime, Bird, and Razor all provide some sort of discount program should you meet certain requirements, such as being on food stamps or needing federal assistance. And going through these customer discount plans, they can receive either a discount on their ride or free rides. Bird also offered 2 free 30-minute rides per day for healthcare workers and emergency personnel due to COVID. Another program the city is working on right now is the Active Transportation Wayfinding Signage Project program. So this program is being funded by the SACOG Innovative Transportation Demand Management Grant and the Yolo Solano Air Quality Management District Clean Air Fund Grant. So this effort is related to strategies 1, 5, and 6. So wayfinding signage, as a way of background, is a collection of directional signs that inform people of their surroundings to kind of show them at strategic points and to guide them into the right direction of a destination, or to like identify destinations that they might not have previously been aware about. The intent of this grant is to install wayfinding signs to increase non-commute trips, so more discretionary trips like recreational or social wise for among seniors, youth, and families. The city actually launched a survey to seek community feedback on some priority signage locations and preliminary design concepts. So I'll go into that a bit more now. This map here shows the priority locations that the city staff is proposing to install priority signs. So the dots in red, this has been determined with the help of our consultant based on low stress transportation routes, nearby transit lines, nearby major destinations, taking into account our mobility action plan and near-term mobility hubs, taking into account like connectivity with existing sidewalks and paths and the trail network. And primarily these locations of this priority signs are centered around West Capitol, Sycamore Trail, and the riverfront area. Additionally, we asked the consultant to identify some more long-term locations to install the active transportation wayfinding signage. So this is identified by the rest of the yellow dots, larger dots on this map. So they identified a program for the north and the south end of the county, of the city. I just put them on 2 different slides so that you can see them better. And then the city released a survey on that asked the residents, what do you think about the priority signage locations we chose? How does that actually capture where people are walking and biking now? And then we also asked about their feedback on the branding concepts that were developed by the consultant. So we in part of the survey, there were 3 concepts that were presented, and the concepts are presented here. So concept A is shown as this kind of bike path in gray and white and yellow. And you can see that there has been, the consultant worked with us and developed these district or neighborhood specific branding concepts that would go more aligned with the brand color scheme and brand in specific areas. So each concept comes with the kind of general, like this is a citywide branding concept, and then a more color scheme that is more related to a specific district, if that's the way we intend to roll this out. So this is concept A, and then this is concept B. And this has more, and this has a more abstract design. The other part of this is that this other, the consultant wanted to make use of the sign to its full extent. So on the back, that's why you see a front and back, they wanted to put like some type of design that indicates that it's for active transportation. So as you're like traveling on one end, you can know that you're approaching signage identifying active transportation and like local destinations, and you can stop and look at it. So this is concept B. And then here's concept C. And concept C takes into account more of this W that we kind of have branded throughout the city. There's a couple transit stops that take into account this like large V that the consultant wanted to showcase and incorporate into one of the designs. And then beyond that, there's other upcoming map related efforts. So the city is working on mobility hubs. That was a big portion of the map. Currently, Yolo County Transportation District and Caltrans District has submitted a transit and intercity rail capital program grant for a mobility hub at West Capitol and Enterprise. This is related to strategy 1 of the map to incorporate and focus on developing our mobility hub program. We also are working on, we plan to work on an update to the 2018 Bicycle, Pedestrian, and Trails Master Plan later this year. And this is related to strategy 2 to prioritize projects that enhance safety for non-vehicular road users and create more space for walking and rolling in the public right-of-way. And we also have 2 grant-funded programs that we will begin soon. So the Sidewalk and Transportation Equity Program relates to strategies 2 and 3 to prioritize non-vehicular road users and safety, as well as providing convenient and accessible transit and shared mobility options to local and regional destinations. The Sidewalk and Transportation Equity Program is a project that the city is super excited about because the intent is to develop a database on the sidewalk gaps in the city and to identify priority projects that we can fund and move forward to close gaps in our sidewalk network, as well as incorporate maybe some funding into development projects to take advantage of those upcoming developments and make our network connected and safer for our residents. Sacramento Avenue Streets Corridor Improvement Plan is related to strategy 2 to again provide enhanced safety for non-vehicular road users. The Sacramento Ave Complete Streets Corridor Improvement Plan was funded. It received funding through the SACOG Community Design Funding Program. And the intent of this is to create a complete streets corridor improvement plan between Harbor Boulevard and the I-80 corridor. And it's going to take into account the Washington District specific plan update and develop efforts to create a safer and active transportation plan for the corridor that takes into account the upcoming developments also intended along the corridor.
Just a quick correction on that. It actually the corridor extends from I-80 to the I Street Bridge, the new I Street Bridge crossing.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry.
I read that wrong. I had that and I read it backwards in my mind. Apologies. And then lastly, the city staff is taking into account upcoming funding sources and tracking the grant opportunities and deadlines. So coming up is the State Active Transportation Program Cycle 6 call for projects. Grant applications are due June 15th. We're also watching for SACOG's revolving local match fund, as well as the SACOG's regional active transportation program call for projects, and the SACOG Green Means Go Fund. And lastly, we're tracking the California Department of Transportation Sustainable Transportation Planning Grant. And most of the current one that we are aware of and are working on right now with a deadline that's out is the state's active transportation plan. The others are scheduled to more or less come out during the summer and fall timeframes. And with that, that's the end of my presentation. I'll open up for any questions.
Saying we just received word that the mobility action plan has received an award of excellence from the American Planning Association Northern Chapter, the Sacramento Northern Section. So we're pretty proud about this plan and very excited. The official award date is yet to be announced, but we did receive word from the local group that this was recognized. So we're very excited about that.
Well, congratulations, and thank you for that presentation. It was very informative, and all the materials that went along with it. So I really appreciate seeing all of the hard work from the city council and city staff on this. So there are questions. So I'm going to start with Commissioner Lichtenstein.
And yes, and congrats on the award. I have two questions. The first, line options, phenomenal. I admittedly under a rock on children, but I actually hadn't. I wasn't aware of the survey. So I'd love to hear more about outreach community, about how we involved and what.
Sure. So we've blasted it all on our social media websites, and then because we were doing some additional outreach about the pilot program, we also shared that we were doing the survey with some of the schools up in the Broderick Bright area. We put up, we let the rec center and the community center know that we're doing the survey as well, and they posted it up on their social media, and I believe they posted some posters that I provided them about the survey. And then I also reached out to Civic Threads, or also previously known as Walk Sacramento, because they helped us with the pilot signage that we did back in 2018. And this the current wayfinding signage project that we have is a follow-up effort on that. So I asked if they would share that around, since they were the consultants involved in that previous effort. And then we also published this survey both in English and Spanish.
We also did post in the city council newsletter, which often gets picked up by the local paper.
Okay, well, I will look for it. For that. My other question, the step pilot or the step program that you just I would love to hear a little bit more on this presentation about that will include and the that. And that might be a later.
Yeah, yes. So the STEP program does include some, like when we wrote this scope of work that went to Caltrans for the grant submission, it did include some criteria we wanted to consider. And that did include equity and equality, because even if you have a sidewalk, like if it's wider or like actually ADA accessible, that's a different factor than like the fact that you just have a sidewalk there. But those criteria will be further refined once we have a consultant on board, and we do plan to present the criteria to commission and council for approval before moving forward with prioritizing projects based upon a framework.
Okay, Commissioner Johnston.
Thank you so much. Congratulations on that award. That's huge. And thank you as well for the presentation. Just one question. I'm really loving the city's focus on pedestrian and bike paths. That's obviously a very huge passion of mine. I just wanted to know what the process is for working with law enforcement to ensure that pedestrian safety is a feature of all of the mobility that we're doing, especially as it relates to bike paths and walkways. What is the long-term vision for that?
I can jump in on that. So as far as our coordination with law enforcement, we have regular meetings between the capital projects division and the engineering folks with the fire department, specifically the fire marshal. And then we have representatives from the police department, including Jason Mahaffey often attends the meetings. And then some of our other groups like Parks and Recreation sometimes attend, Transportation Division will sometimes attend, or Community Development, depending on the projects, to talk about where some of the deficiencies lie, where some things need improvement, and that coordination ultimately gets compiled into a list that the engineering group from Capital Projects brings to the TMI Commission on an annual basis for prioritization. You guys might recall that we've done that a number of times where we've brought various priority projects to the commission for input. That will ultimately go to the city council, and the city council will then prioritize those projects for development. The STEP grant is one of those things that was developed in response to input that we had received about various gaps in our sidewalk network. And so that's how these move forward. So the coordination that we have is internally with the police department as well as the other departments.
Okay, Commissioner Thurical. I'm sorry, Vice Chair.
Just curious to know if this is part of the plan already, or if it should be. I know that of course people have their own bikes to use as well. So when they're going out and using their own bike or scooter, do we have the infrastructure to support, for people and residents to lock up their bikes safely in different areas? Is there a plan to increase those as we increase the way or increase the paths or routes that people would take as we expand?
That's a great question. And Jason, if you want to add anything, I think I've talked to Steve about this a bit. For those who don't know, Steve is our new associate transportation planner. And with our upcoming update to the bicycle, pedestrian, and trails master plan, I was hoping we could include some additional locations or have the consultant identify locations for, bike racks and kind of infrastructure to make cycling and safer and easier, such as those little repair stations or rest stops or lockers. Part of that is also part of the mobility hubs of the map anyway. So I think it's a little bit of, as we update the bike, ped, and trails master plan, because that was last updated in 2018, to coordinate and update it to cohesively and comprehensively take into account our other plans. That is an effort that I'm hoping to include.
Are there any additional comments or questions from the commission? Okay, I just want to add that I think that was a really good point, Vice Chair Thurical. I had spent a little bit of time in an East Coast city that had a really wonderful network of trails, but they were pretty much designed for recreation. There was no infrastructure to park your bike or even get from the trail to a store safely. And and so I think it's really great that the city is looking at bicycles and other forms of transportation as means to get around and sort of do normal things in life. I'm also really thrilled to see that the sidewalk gaps are being addressed. I live in a neighborhood with a lot of sidewalk gaps and a lot of older people that are basically walking to church in the middle of the street. So yeah, I'm really happy to see that's being addressed in these especially in the older neighborhoods. I think that's where a lot of the gaps are, and certainly Sacramento Avenue is pretty close to where I live. So yeah, I'm pretty happy to hear that. And that's all I've got. I look forward to looking more closely at the plan as it comes out and seeing the updates to the bike plan that are being worked on. So thank you very much. Any other comments? Okay, seeing none. Then let's move on to item 4. Consideration of a workshop on a 1-year contract renewal with Nomad Transit LLC for continued operation of the West Sacramento on-demand ride share program. And it looks like Stephanie Fan, you're on deck for that too.
Yes. Okay, give me 1 second. Let me pull this PowerPoint up. Okay, so this is a follow-up to our March TMI Commission staff report and presentation. At the March TMI Commission, we kind of presented a update on ridership since at its current status of COVID, and as we're kind of as the pandemic starts to subside and people begin to come out of the pandemic and ride via or go out more, as well as we gave an update on the release of a 2022 via survey, and so this workshop's to provide a report on the 2022 survey results, as well as the fiscal year 22-23 proposed contract extension that we plan to bring to council before the end of the fiscal year, as the current contract expires June 30th, 2022. So this slide just presents information on the current service performance. It's just a slightly updated slide from the March 2022 presentation. Overall, we've provided over 456,000 rides since the program launch in fiscal year 2022. So far, we've provided over 106,000 rides and 65,000 total rides overall for senior and disabled rides. We're currently averaging about 2,600 rides per week and a daily ridership of 430 rides. Current ETA of the program is about 14.7 minutes in fiscal year 2022. You have to remember that during COVID, we had some passenger capacity restrictions in place, which limited our resources and did drive up our wait times a bit. But we still have maintained a 4.9 average rating, and overall, the cost per ride has been about $12.54 for the program expenses to riderships from July 1st to to March 30th. And we've also had over approximately 3,000 unique riders in fiscal year 2022. And total overall, we have over 560 senior and disabled rider accounts. And as you see, and as presented at the March TMI Commission, ridership is rebounding towards not pre-COVID levels. And with that, I'll later present the fiscal year 22-23 budget proposal in relation to this. Before we go into that, I wanted to provide a report on the 2022 via survey. So we released the survey back in February to assess the via ridership and to evaluate if at all, how the use of the platform has changed and matured since its launch in 2018. We gave pretty similar questions to the 2018 survey to allow for staff to analyze changes and differences. The types of questions you can see to the right of this PowerPoint slide with the new questions we asked in bold. We received 359 responses with an 85% completion rate. So this time around, we did ask for some information on COVID commute choice shifts, just because we're still operating under a COVID era. And then we asked information on employment, race and ethnicity, number of personal vehicles in household, residency, just to get some more demographics data that we could analyze the use of VIA with. So the next few slides just is intended to show that the demographics of the survey respondents were pretty similar to the 5-year American Community Survey of the West Sacramento community. But I'll highlight a few differences that we can note. So generally, the age and sex of our respondents were similar to the American Community Survey, except for you'll note that our survey received a higher amount of respondents who were males between the ages of 30 to 39 and females between the ages of 40 to 49. We received the breakdown based on reported gender. 52% self-reported as female, 40% as male, and 9% preferred not to identify. In terms of education, generally the same as or pretty close to the 2025 year American Community Survey. The main difference is that you can see the bachelor degree and beyond, we received a higher response from people holding higher educational degrees. Additionally, compared to total annual household income, it's pretty similar to the American Community Survey. You can see that there is a bit of difference between the survey and the ACS in regards to the kind of $50,000 to $100,000 income levels. So we received fewer responses from households within the 50,000 to 75,000 range, and more responses from households within the 75,000 to 100,000 range compared to the ACS. And then again, this time, because we did ask about race and ethnicity, these questions did identify a pretty similar breakdown as compared to the West Sac community from the 5-year American Community Survey. And we did ask a few new questions this time. So we asked how many personal vehicles are in your household. 21% of respondents have identified that they have no personal vehicles in their household. 43% said they had one personal vehicle. 24% had 2 personal vehicles, and 12% had 3 or more personal vehicles in their household. We also asked respondents whether or not they were residents of the West Sacramento community, and 68% of respondents were residents, whereas about 24 or 32 total percent were they either worked or were students in West Sacramento but lived outside of the city, or they were just visiting the city. So before I get into more information about how the 2022 survey changed compared to the 2018 survey, I wanted to go over how respondents felt their commute changes were impacted due to COVID. So as expected, you can see that there were a decrease in how often people would commute to work or school based on COVID. So over 40% indicated that they didn't, they commuted to school or work less due to COVID. Similarly, like the use of taxi or Uber or Lyft significantly decreased. It was about 50% said that their use of Uber and Lyft and taxi services decreased. Similar with the buses, about 40% or so. And leaving the home was close to around 50%. There were some equal breakdowns on like bicycling and walking, as you probably heard throughout COVID, where people probably biked and walked more for recreational purposes, or felt that it was safer to walk and bike. So there wasn't really it was pretty equal between the people who replied decrease versus increase for those. And similar for driving alone during COVID, I'm sure many people, and as you know, there was a large increase in the sales of secondhand vehicles. So just because being away from others was a safer option to travel during COVID. And so looking at this COVID travel behavioral impacts, there were some differences with how respondents felt their commute behavior changed due to COVID based on age and income. So the ones who left home less often, respondents under 50 years old, only about 46% said that they left home less often versus nearly 70% of respondents over 50 years old. And respondents with a higher income reported leaving home less often than respondents with a lower income. So 58% said they left home less if they made an income over 50,000, as compared to only 41% with an income less than 50,000. And in relation to the income, the commute to work and school was, there were some differences on income based on that. So for those with incomes less than 50,000, 54% said that their commute to work or school increased, compared to respondents with an income more than 50,000 reported their commute to work or school decreasing. And the other kind of new, or actually this is partially a new question and not new question. So we did ask a question similar to the 2018 survey, asking respondents how many trips have they taken in the past 30 days. And two new questions we asked that I mentioned earlier were whether they were residents of the West Sacramento community, and as well as how many personal vehicles were in their household. So as expected, non-residents reported, or residents with fewer number of personal vehicles in their household reported a higher via ridership, which was expected. But surprisingly, we saw that non-residents reported a higher frequency of taking via than residents of West Sacramento. So non-residents reported taking via an average about 8.9 rides in the past 30 days, as compared to residents who reported about 5.9 rides in the last 30 days. This might be because non-residents might be using it more for their employment or school commute. So they're using it more frequently and regularly than a resident who might know and use VIA because they're going over to use it for socializing once every now and then. We also asked, as a result of your VIA rideshare use, how has your transportation choices changed, if at all? And this was also asked during the 2018 survey. So the bar graph you see, the stacked bar graph you see on the left, shows the 2022 survey responses breakdown percentage of the decrease and increase. And then the table on the right shows the response differences between the 2018 and the 2022 survey. Some things to note is that it does appear that the 2022 survey's respondents indicated fewer respondents indicated satisfaction with the rideshare service, or that they left home more often, or that they walked or bicycled more, or not walked or bicycled, but or use but like between those two, for satisfaction and leaving home, there might be some COVID impacts that kind of skewed the responses of our in our survey, as well as the fact that our survey or the VIA service has been out for nearly 4 years, so it's not really a new service anymore, and there might be more people who feel like there could be like improvements made to the service as compared to providing a whole new transportation option when we conducted the survey in 2018 as a 6-month user survey of the program. We did see a higher number of people reporting that they were bicycling and walking more. And this is interesting. Not sure if it's a COVID related response or if they feel like more people are connecting the fact that, you know, they have to walk to get picked up for their VIA ride, and responded that they're walking more because of that. We had a lower decrease in transit use and driving alone as compared to the 2018 survey. Again, unclear whether or not this is more related to a COVID-related response, or also there has been service changes that YCTD has made in the last year. So there has been some route discontinuations in our city. And then we also asked in the survey impacts on quality of life, whether they felt safer getting around town, more independent, how was their access to healthy foods. Again, this was a question that we asked during the 2018 survey. And so you can see on this table the shifts. There isn't much differences when you're going looking at the overall responses between the two. There is a little bit higher responses of saying that they felt like less people felt safer getting around, or like a less sense of independence, but only a tad higher percentage as compared to the 2018 survey. And I'll give you a second to just take a look at these numbers. Okay. And then the 2022 survey also included new questions to discern changes in vehicle miles traveled and multimodal transportation. So survey respondents were asked if they didn't take VIA, what would they have done instead? Would you have been driven by a friend? Would you have taken Uber, Lyft? Would you carpool? And or would you bike, walk? What would you do? Take the bus. So for the respondents who answered that they would either be driven by a friend or family member, taken taxi, carpool or vanpool, or drive alone, we asked them, how many miles would your trip have been? And 112 respondents out of 359, so about a third of our respondents responded that they and gave a mileage number tacked to their trip, and that averaged out to approximately 23 miles, which is quite surprising. And to add on to that point, another question we asked, which might make the 23 miles sound more reasonable, is that we asked respondents whether they use VIA to connect to other forms of transportation. And 103 out of our 359 respondents said that they do use VIA to connect to the bus, train, light rail, e-bikes, e-scooters, Lyft, or Uber. So like there were a number of people probably, and like looking through the survey, who stated that they use VIA to connect to the Amtrak and take it elsewhere. Like they'll go over to the rail, to the city boundary, and then walk over to the Amtrak station over in Sacramento. And that concludes my survey result presentation. So now I'm going to go over the proposed contract extension between the current fee schedule and the proposed fiscal year 2022-23 schedule. There's no proposed changes in the hours of operation. As you know, as presented in the March TMI Commission, we are moving towards a hybrid Toyota Sienna fleet, as our the fleet provider for VIA changed, and we wanted to make moves towards electrification. So the proposed contract extension shows a projected contract budget of approximately 2.4 million, as you can see at the bottom last row of this table, as compared to the project budget for the 21-22 contract was 1.9 million. So this number actually, when you're looking at the rest of the table, you'll see a significant change in the contract rate. So you see that the operations rate increases from $42.97 to $50.72. And this is primarily because of fuel prices. So compared to when the 21-22 contract was developed, gas prices were in the low $3, and recent average from AAA of gas prices are in the $5 range. It also includes salary adjustments to fit into the West Sacramento market and make be a competitive employer of choice and maintain our service levels. So as you probably have heard, other transit agencies have been struggling to maintain their transit operators. And VIA is no different. And if anything, there's additional competition they have to deal with other kind of gig worker driver opportunities where people have the ability to set their own schedule. So in that sense, VIA increased the wages for our VIA drivers, as well as had to include additional increase on recruitment purposes. And then just there, it also was included just increases across the board of services that tech services needed to operate the platform, as well as increase, just an inflationary increase. As you probably heard, there's been the reports have indicated that there is an 8% increase in inflation. So all of that combined increased the operations rate from $42.97 to $50.72, about a 18% increase. Similarly, the customer support rate increased from $31.25 to $36.88. Another similar rate of increase. As you'll see, ridership projections between the 21-22 and the 22-23 contract remain pretty similar. And this is primarily because VIA did an updated analysis looking back at previous year riderships and determined that 192 riderships was sufficient to meet the upcoming demand as we rise out of COVID. And the new part of this contract that isn't included in the contract budget yet, and also based on the survey results, is that we asked VIA what's the opportunity of adding bike racks onto our vehicles to provide a more seamless multimodal transportation option. So they said that the projected amount is $350 per vehicle. This excludes the wave vehicles because we need to use those vehicles for allowing wheelchair accessibility. So it'll total about a $3,000 effort to install bike racks across the non-wave vehicle VIA fleet. And so the other part of this of like the projected budget, as well as the projected TDA claim, because as you know, we use TDA funds to support the VIA program. The projected ridership, the projected fare revenue is VIA projected for the, the projected fare revenue and the rollover from the existing budget is rolled into what we put into our TDA claim to claim less, because the city council approved rolling over excess funds into operations of the next fiscal year. The other part that I need to mention is that the projected fare revenue for the upcoming fiscal year took into account a ridership distribution of via pass riders and other, like the senior and disabled rider discounts, as well as like if you're a rider but you have you're getting a ride with multiple people, aka like you're one person booking a ride for like 3 people, each additional rider is just $1 versus the full $3.50. So based on all this analysis of the ridership in previous years, that's why the projected revenue for fiscal year 22-23, which is not the fare revenue rollover, that's separate, is lower than previous years. And with that, I'll open up to questions. I know that there was a lot of information in the budget present slide, so I will happily answer anything.
Stephanie, could you remind the commissioners what it is that you're looking for from them?
So for this report, I am looking for feedback and direction on the operation and budget approach that we are proposing for the fiscal year 22-23 contract extension. We plan to go to council in June for extending the contract.
Okay, thank you very much for that presentation. That was again very informative and really great to see the survey data and how it changed, and in some ways was surprising. And so I'm going to open it up for questions and comments and feedback from the commissioners. Are there any comments? I see Commissioner Gunn.
Yes, thank you for the presentation. I'm Stephanie. Couple questions. Did the city look at accepting bids from other contractors besides VIA?
So so not currently, because when we initially started the pilot program and the on-demand rideshare program with VIA, we gave the option for up to 5 extensions of the contract. So with the initial contract was for 1 year with 5 annual extensions. So we're currently ending our 4th year of operations and the fourth contract extension is coming up.
Okay, so it's more of just kind of like since they were good partners, the city's simply looking to exercise another year with them.
Yes.
Okay, so that kind of answers my question.
Yeah, so the every year we do a fee schedule update to take into account like wages and fuel prices and projections on ridership. And that's every year we bring a budget to council for adoption. And then so we haven't looked at seeking any other operator for this effort. And I would also like to note that it would probably result in a gap in the service, because our current contract with VIA ends on June 30th. So if we were to go for an open competitive procurement at this point, there would be a gap on our on-demand rideshare program.
Yeah, I mean, but for next year, if you were to start soliciting, putting an advertisement, RFQ out or whatnot, then you could possibly have the opportunity next year, without going into extension, to see if there are other providers who could maybe provide service at a little bit less or more beneficial to the city, or maybe a larger fleet or whatnot.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Just to add to that, there are performance criteria that we have for the provider. VIA is meeting the parameters that were set by the city council for providing the service within a reasonable time frame, with an appropriate safety record, appropriate level of service. And so at this point in time, it would not be staff's recommendation to go out, as we pointed out, because they are meeting the needs that are in the contract. It is entirely, though, up to the city council if they decide to exercise going out to bid for other providers. We would definitely, as staff, be following city council's guidance at that point. So if they chose, when this goes before them, that they are not interested in renewing, then that's something that staff will then just have to follow through at that point. But as Stephanie mentioned, it would at this point represent a gap in service, but it will be noted that to the city council that this is the fourth renewal, and so it is within their purview to seek other providers in the future.
Were there any other companies interested besides VIA when the contract was first procured?
Yes, there were. So years ago, when we initially developed the concept, we did have a procurement process. We had a number of providers that were interested, including at the time YCTD's own provider, TransDev. So through that competitive procurement process, we ultimately selected VIA as the top scoring candidate to provide the service. That, however, as I said, could change, because this is purely up to the city council to decide what direction staff goes.
Yeah. And just out of curiosity, when this contract was first procured, were there any DBE or DVBE goals that were part of this contract?
I don't recall that being, this is not a federal contract. There are no federal funds tied, except TDA funds, which we do get from SACOG. So to my knowledge, there weren't, but that's something that we could always go back and look. It's been a number of years, so I don't recall offhand.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Johnston.
Thank you again for this presentation, Ms. Chan. Just a question on the cost per ride. Is this the first time that the cost per ride has been increased?
So the cost of ride, we calculate that just based on the contract budget and the projected ridership. So that number is just like an average, but if you're talking about the contract rates, like is it the first time it's been increased? Because it's a no, because in previous years we've had increases just based on like inflation and adding a kind of support for our services. So I believe at one point our like operations rate was down at 36 when we first started, around $36, and it has raised up to 42. Some of it probably includes like COVID increases back in last year with the fee schedule update. This year, now that fuel prices are much higher.
Thank you for that. The reason I ask
yeah.
is I just want to first and foremost know if any of the cost will be transferred to the rider itself.
So currently that is not proposed, because rides are $350 unless you've received a senior or disabled discount, in which case it's half off. There's also the frequent rider program that riders can get a weekly pass to ride via 4 times a day, up to for a week, each day in a week for $15, and then seniors and disabled riders also get the half off discount on that. As I reported in the staff report, our Via Pass program actually takes into actually is a significant cut of our revenue stream because it accounts for half our ridership actually. Of like we recent data from Via that we've been looking at shows that every week we have about 250 Via passes purchased. About 220 of them are the regular fares, so the $15, and 30 of them are discounted fares. And if you can take 4 rides a day, you're taking up to 28 rides a week, and that accounts actually for approximately half of our net revenue.
Okay, great. So the rider shouldn't experience.
No, unless city council directs us to reconsider fare prices, they should not experience a change.
Thank you.
Commissioner Lichtenstein.
Are you muted? I'm sorry. I cannot hear you. Maybe others could.
Yeah, I cannot hear you either. You could type your question in the chat, perhaps. Okay, does come back. We can come back to Commissioner Lichtenstein. Commissioner Therical or Vice Chair Therical.
Yeah, I just had a question about the hours of operation. I know that there are no proposed changes. I'm just wondering if there are if there's something written in the contract perhaps that would allow VIA to change like the hours of operation on this specific day in case there was some kind of event that is held in the city past those hours of operation that could provide safe transportation for after those kind of city events.
I would defer to Jason. Maybe I don't recall, but maybe I'm wrong.
Yes, we have done that before. However, nothing is free. So any funding has to be allocated by the city council for anything special. I'll give you a really good example. Is the free rides to the Bright Broderick neighborhood to the pool. As I'm sure a lot of the commissioners are aware, there's been a lot of discussion about desire to have the city install a new swimming pool in the Bright Broderick neighborhood. That is a very expensive infrastructure investment. And so in the short term, what we're doing is identifying what the demand is for folks to actually use the city's public pool facilities. And so we have sought funding. The city has allocated $50,000 to go toward that. However, we've also applied for an air quality management district. Am I getting that right, Stephanie? It is.
Yes, clean air funds from the Yolo Solano Air Quality Management District. I also have good news on that front, actually. I was told today that their staff is recommending an award of $10,000 to the city for that pilot.
Fantastic. So that helps offset some of the costs for staff to develop reporting, a monthly reporting around the ridership associated with that. So the answer, this is a long response to your question. Yes, we can do that. However, we do need to have funding allocated to make that happen. The second case in point was when during COVID, we needed to have food bank service provided. So transportation for the food bank for folks in need. And we were able to use some city funds in order to secure VIA for those purposes.
In those cases, those additional costs aren't in this contract budget. It's kind of something that happens outside in addition to when we want to.
Yeah. And I would like to note that our operational hours are pretty extensive already. We operate on the weekday 6 a.m. to 11 p.m., Saturdays 9 a.m. to 11 p.m., and Sundays 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. And this we operate on all holidays too. So
Thank you very much.
Commissioner Lichtenstein, want to try again? Wait, I think I hear you.
I hear you.
Does that work?
Yeah.
Okay, great. I'll speak up. Thank you for coming back to me. I can ask questions. So the first is, I promise, on topic and the reason that you asked us to comment. Given the common destinations that you outlined and all of the clear travel to and from the city of Sacramento itself, have we considered any sort of a partnership, or have we gone back to them to repropose a partnership, cover the areas of downtown, midtown, and West Sacramento, and share those costs jointly? Because it sounds like a lot of folks are going to Amtrak or maybe to or from work, and it would make sense to have that cross-river connectivity.
So going back, we had analyzed that previously. I think some of the commission might recall that Sarah Strand was working on developing an analysis for that. Now this is just my trying to recall, but I believe at the time it was just a little over $1 million for the city to provide that service. What we wound up doing was working to, and there were transfers that were provided to YCTV from VIA, so that folks could get a ride to the Yolo Bus transit station and get a free transfer to hop on the bus to get into downtown. So that was considered to be a much more viable solution than allocating the additional city funds it would take to provide service into the city of Sacramento, where already there is transit service provided.
Yeah, I guess my question was more about integrating those. So it wouldn't be a cost exclusively borne by West Sac or Sacramento, but having a more integrated program.
There are a number of partnerships that we've been working with the city of Sacramento to do. There are also a number of partnerships that they're not interested in exploring. At this time, I have brought it up and there wasn't any interest in exploring. However, that's not to say that there wouldn't be future interest, especially considering that VIA is associated now with Sacramento Regional Transit as well as ourselves. And we have talked with SAC-RT about that and about the potential for partnerships. And it sounds like there's more interest in SAC-RT teaming with the city than the city of Sac. So at this point, I have not brought it up again. That's not to say I can't, but the city of Sacramento has their own priorities.
Okay, thank you. My next question, comment, observation. I noticed in some of the responses, there's a pretty clear gender divide in usage, particularly among some of the younger categories. And I have some theories about that, as I'm sure you all do. But one of those theories is that oftentimes women have younger children with them. It's difficult to take rides, or they're at home. Maybe they were forced to leave the workforce during COVID, et cetera. And they may need booster seats and car seats to travel in these vans. And so this summer, as you consider the pilot program serving Brighton Braddock neighborhoods going to the rec center, will those vans have a booster seat or a car seat for those parents traveling with younger children who might need that?
We have not considered that, but we can request or like look into it a bit more. I'm not, I guess like we'll check in with VIA and see options and opportunities, or I know that there's also those kind of travel travel booster seats that are pretty compact that people use nowadays.
Great, thank you. No, I appreciate you inquiring with them. And a lot of car seats are adjustable for different heights and whatnot. And obviously there's some COVID and cleanliness issues car seats, but just an observation. I'd be curious how it might impact folks' choices this summer in regards to free rides.
Commissioners, are there any other comments or questions? I've got a quick follow-on comment from Commissioner Lichtenstein. Yeah, I think cross river connectivity could be an interesting factor. So I'm really happy that the bike rack is being considered, because I think that might facilitate cross river connectivity, where folks could take a via to the edge of the city to one of the bridges and then continue on their way into downtown Sacramento, or potentially other areas of the county that they might be biking towards. So I think I just want to lend support to the bike rack idea, because I think it facilitates that. And the other question I had was, do we have an idea of how many riders are requesting transfers to other transportation modes?
We do not have rider like specific. The only information we do have is from either the survey, as well as we do ask YCTD for information when on tracking the transfers. So we know between VIA and YCTD who's transferring and like kind of when they're transferring, as well as which routes they're transferring to. So just based on my cursory review of the YOLO bus via transfers, Route 42 is a pretty popular route.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. And then you might have heard that in the next fiscal year, YCTD has been proposed in their budget to launch their Route 42 expansion.
Yeah, I think that was all my comments. The other thing that struck me was there wasn't as much decrease in public transit as I would expect with COVID. I thought that was really interesting that some folks increased leaving their house and whatnot, other than bicycling, which might be exercise. So I thought that was interesting. And the other thing I thought was interesting was the number of rides per non-resident. And so it does have me wondering how they're getting into West Sacramento in the first place. Like, are they coming in via a bus? Are they getting a ride in? Are they visiting a family member and they're too young to drive? Like, I'm quite curious about that. I thought that was a really interesting finding for your survey. Anyway, that was all I had to say. Commissioners, are there any other comments regarding the feedback on this proposed budget and contract extension? Okay, I don't. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna, I mean, Jason alluded to this. The only feedback I would give, I mean, I'm fully in support of this extension. The only feedback I would give would be if the opportunity arises to, in the future, again, discuss integration with the city of Sacramento for additional coverages, I would also support that. But those are a lot of conditional ifs, so it might not happen.
Just for clarification, are you asking for the city of Sacramento to contribute funds for West Sacramentans to receive rides into their city?
I mean, it would be a joint venture. I don't know how the funds would be split, but I would make a strong case that West Sacramentans who want to spend money at restaurants and out at bars are more likely to do so in the city of Sacramento, and therefore the city of Sacramento has an interest. But what that interest is, I couldn't tell you.
I did, just as a side note, for the last 7 years, I've been trying to make that case on streetcar. City of Sacramento has officially pulled all their funding from that, citing that there is no gain for the city of Sacramento to participate in the streetcar project, even though 75% of the line is within their right-of-way and more stations are serving city of Sacramento residents than West Sacramento. However, that is lost on our partners over the river. So when it comes to funding, we have been largely unsuccessful at convincing the city of Sacramento that something that benefits West Sacramento will also benefit Sacramento. But I will continue to try to do so.
Thank you for that uphill battle.
Thank you. Are there any additional comments and questions?
I guess I just one question, kind of picking back off the topic about going to Sacramento. Does that $1 million, does that include the idea of like, if I wanted to go get a ride to like, I don't know, Midtown or to the arena, would that basically I would be dropped off there and then rides would only come back to West Sacramento? So rides wouldn't be allowed within Sacramento? So is it kind of a drop off in Sacramento, pick up Sacramento and come back to West Sac?
So the way it was explored did not go into beyond, I believe it was beyond 7th Street. Because going all the way into Midtown, you'd be adding multiple millions of dollars. Purely because what happens is, as all these vehicles are going into Sacramento, you still have a number of residents in West Sacramento that are still looking to get rides. That means more vans, more staff. And because we need to maintain the contractual obligation of rides being less than 20 minutes for a pickup time, you then have an even greater increase in the number of rides that have to be gotten. We can also not discern between residents in Sacramento or West Sacramento when it comes to a cutoff line. We would have to actually ask more people if, say, they requested a ride in Sacramento. Right now, anywhere in the city of Sacramento, you can get a ride. You just, plop it on your phone and a van can go anywhere. If we have a cutoff in the city of Sacramento, for instance, then there's a couple of things that happen. We would have to say, okay, if somebody's in Midtown and says, I want to ride, coming from this bar, okay, well, then you need to walk 3 miles before we could come and pick you up. Logistically, that becomes very problematic from just our own contractual standpoint, because then obviously you're not going to get your ride within the time period that you're requesting. So, and geofencing a certain area would be even more difficult for us into another jurisdiction. So the logistics of it become more of the problem, and managing those things become more expensive. So what we had initially looked at was our data from VIA showed that a number of folks wanted to get to Kaiser, they wanted to get to Sacramento Valley Station, and they wanted to get to the light rail system vis-a-vis like West Capitol. Just as a side note, Chair Zimmer, you said you would be interested to know where some of those rides are in stations. We showed heat maps, and a lot of those pickups are at 3rd and Tower Bridge Gateway, because you have a lot of folks who are walking over the bridge or taking a scooter, and then they hop on VIA from there. So for what we initially tried to look at was what is our data show where people want to go, and that was as far as 7th and Capitol Mall to get to the light rail station, to get to Sacramento Valley Station for regional light rail, and also for a corridor service, and to Kaiser Hospital. So in looking at that, we said, okay, well, how can we limit to this area and get folks where they need to go? I'm trying to recall a couple of years ago from this analysis, but I believe it was just a little over $1 million in order to maintain our service parameters while still providing a minimal amount of service to get people where they need to go in Sacramento. As I had mentioned, it would be tough for Sacramento to pay for any part of that because they don't consider it a benefit for their own folks. So we would have to partner with the transit, so YCTD or with SAC-RT to try to make that happen. Now, there is still discussions happening on that front, albeit, this is grant season and we're kind of pushed that to the background for right now as we work through the contract extension right now and trying to get where we need to go. That's not to say that in the future we can't go back and look at it again. But there are other projects that we're working on, and there's already current transit service going into downtown vis-a-vis the YCTD service. So providing those transfers was the easiest, fastest way it all supports YCTD, our own transit service provider. I guess what I'm trying to say is there's also one other project that we're focused on, and that's the downtown riverfront streetcar, which is not dead. City of Sacramento has said that they are opposed to extending streetcar down 3rd Street, where we have it environmentally cleared, and we already have 100% engineering design. So what the city has told us is, well, we're going to be opposed to this project, so you need to move it. We said, well, if we move it, then we've got another couple of $1 million worth of engineering and another couple of $1 million in environmental clearance that we have to do. And the response we got was kind of all shoulders. And so we talked most recently with Congresswoman Matsui, sat down in a meeting with her, with Councilmember Ledesma, with our mayor, with 2 of the council members in city of Sacramento. A couple of council members were still opposed to it. However, we did get consensus under the leadership of Congresswoman Matsui to realign the streetcar project down N Street. Sacramento has confirmed they will not pay for any part of that, even though it's at their request. And so we're going to be pursuing additional grant funds from the federal government to try to pay for that. So that's another project that would provide the connectivity into downtown. And right now, our priority is to allocate the funding that we can to get that project put together, because without that project, we can never bring light rail into Southport as envisioned in the Southport Framework Plan as far back as 1995. And if we can't do that, then you can imagine the congestion on Jefferson that we're going to see in the future as Liberty, Yarborough, as River Park all start to develop, and we get another 5,000-6,000 units down in Southport with no feasible means of providing high quality, frequent mass transit to Southport Town Center. So we've got a lot of different priorities that we're trying to juggle. To put it a little bit more in perspective, without regional connecting in West Sacramento, calculation about a year ago, we need about 320 VIA vans in order to provide the same amount of transit service that light rail can provide. So I'll just leave with that comment and let you know that we are working to try to resolve all of these issues, not just getting into downtown from the north part of the city, but also long-term vision, trying to provide frequent high-quality transit all the way into Southport.
Did you say move the streetcar to N Street?
Correct. The latest agreement is to just for the initial line, starting from Sutter Health Park, going down east across Tower Bridge to 3rd Street, and instead of making a left to go to the transit station to Sacramento Valley Transit Station, you'd be making a right and going down to N Street, and then continue east on N till you get to the existing rail infrastructure at 7th and Capitol and 8th and O area. And then you'd pick up the existing rail infrastructure that SacRT is currently operating light rail on, that will take you all the way to Sacramento Valley Station. And then it would return back again. The agreement on the part of the city of Sacramento is that they go to their city council and they get consensus from the city council that they support this change, and that they need to convert N Street and 3rd Street from one-way traffic to 2-way to facilitate the rail. So this is what Matsui brokered between cities. And she also expressed her support for helping the city of West Sacramento secure additional federal funds to try to make this happen. And she also worked in the latest infrastructure bill to provide an extension of the $50 million that the project has already received from the administration into 2023, 2024 school year to allow this to continue on.
That's very interesting. I find myself wondering what other options were discussed. I was just curious if it was ever discussed sending the train, the streetcar across the new I Street Bridge, then have it run up and down West Sacramento to Sutter Health Park.
So the goal was to, I mean, if West Sacramento had if this was just a West Sacramento project, it would have already been built and operating. However, working with the city of Sacramento, their options were do this or don't have the project.
Yeah.
So I'm just being frank.
Yeah. No.
Did they give any rationale for no longer thinking 3rd was viable and instead pushing N Street?
I am the project manager and I have not heard any rationale for it.
Well, that was really interesting. Thank you for sharing that. Commissioners, are there any other questions or comments? Okay. Hearing none, going back to the agenda here. Okay, that brings part 4 to a close. We're going to move into general administration function part 2, 5A, Transportation, Mobility, and Infrastructure Commission calendar. The next regular meeting is scheduled for July 4th. I assume that will probably change. I don't know if there's any information on that at this time, but we'll keep our ears perked.
So typically we push it back to the following week. So I will go ahead and make sure that that happens and that the invites are sent out to the commission just to confirm your availability.
Great, thank you. 5B, reports from city staff. Are there any reports from city staff?
There are. We have 2 reports. First one is to disregard item C, the future agenda item requests. As you recall from the last meeting, we discussed that, like the Planning Commission, this is no longer going to be on the agenda because the City Council sets the policy agenda for the city. And at this time, we're just waiting for the administrative acts on that to get an updated agenda. The second item, actually we have 3 items. So the second item is Broadway Bridge. Just to let you know that we are scheduled for May 18th to go before the City Council for final approval, the final environmental impact report, and the findings. You are welcome to take a look at the final EIR EA, which is on the project website, on the city's website. And you'll see if you review all the documents, there's only one a significant and avoidable impact, and that's temporary construction noise. Overall, it's turned out to be a good project. We don't have a lot of negative impacts that we need to mitigate for. So we're proud of that. This will go to the Sacramento City Council on June 14th for final approval from their City Council. So first to ours to certify the EIREA, and then June 14th to the City of Sacramento. And the third item, we have Steve Rosen to present.
Good evening, commissioners. I am Steve Rosen, and I'm here to tell you about Bike Month. I'd be happy to share a slideshow if I could get permission to do so. But I could just start by saying that the first Bike Month was held in 1956, started back then to promote bike safety among kids. But over time, it's grown to promote and celebrate bicycling as a transportation and recreation for people of all ages. There we go. Share. Yeah, so SACOG and the Sacramento Area Bicycle Advocates do the regional coordination for the Sacramento Region's Bike Month, and their goal is to encourage people to replace car trips with bicycling trips, especially people who rarely bicycle. The city of West Sacramento is participating in Bike Month by holding some events and participating in regional events. The first event was this morning, and that was the regional kickoff event. And some other highlights are the West Capitol Avenue ribbon cutting, Bike to Work Day, and Bike Anywhere Day later in the month. The city is also participating in the region-wide competition at lovetoride.net, where anybody may register, log rides, and win prizes. There's already 2 teams of city staff. CalSTRS is involved, and a lot of other people who live in West Sacramento are taking part. It's not too late to sign up. Points accrue for the number of rides and for miles, so beginners are not really at a disadvantage, especially they ask you if you're a beginner, and they give you a little bonus for that. Bicyclists can join a team at work with their families, friends, at church, with their roommates, or they can just compete solo. There are 2 teams of city staff so far. and the ride logger can be used year-round. Techie cyclists can link to their Strava for automatic tracking, and the prizes include a voucher for a free bike at a local bike shop of your choice. So our most exciting event is on Thursday, May 5th. That's just 3 days from now. It's the ribbon cutting event for the West Capitol Avenue bike lanes. These are important links for bicyclists riding from east to west through and across town, connecting the whole city to City Hall and the community center and library, shopping, schools, and onward to the Tower Bridge and Yellow Causeway. The ride meets at City Hall on Thursday morning at 9 a.m. and the celebration is at Joey Lopes Park at 10 a.m. So you have a half hour to ride your bike that quarter mile. Lime Bikes will be on hand to help people who didn't bring their own bikes sign up for their services, and they're offering a discount for the participants. The code is there on your screen. So that is Bike Month 2022, everyone. Thanks. Happy to answer any questions you have.
Thank you very much, Steve, and welcome. Yeah.
Thanks.
Any questions? I'm gonna see what I can do to come to ribbon cutting. That sounds like fun. All right, if there are no more questions or any additional report, I think we can move to adjourn. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
Vice Chair Therical has moved to adjourn. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Commissioner Gunn, we don't need to take roll call for this, do we? Anyone opposed? Okay.
No roll call.
Okay, motion to adjourn passes. Thank you, everybody, and I'll see you in July.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Recording stopped.